everyone to the 11th Status Quo Dev Call. We have quite a lot of things on the agenda today. We did a poll, S&T voting, to sort of try to find the sort of things that people want to talk most about. We'll see how far we get, but let's just start from top and see how far we get within the time we have. Also, just a small PSA. We have, if you go to the repository, status-im/pm, we also have sort of an index of all the previous videos and notes as well, if you want to refer back. Cool. So with that, let's get started. So the first topic is Whisper availability inside Status DApp browser, which is something that would benefit Telnetwork as well as GastroLayer and possibly others. So I guess, Richard, do you want to elaborate on that, if you don't mind?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So basically, during the development of the GastroLayer and Telnetwork, we saw that we have a need to have Whisper available inside our dApps, mostly because we want our dApps to be able to communicate between each other. So I think I wanted to know, and maybe most of the team working on the GastroLayer and Telnetwork would like to know, is what is the current state of this functionality, and what would it take for our dApps to be able to use Whisper in the Web3 provider that the Status provides?
Well, since I've been discussing this before, like since probably Berlin, so I can probably answer. So first question, so I'll start with the question. So the first question is, do you need this functionality only when the dApp is open in the Status browser, or do you need it to like send asynchronous notifications to somewhere?
Probably what scenarios would be useful?
So for the first one, it's pretty trivial to just allow the namespace, and we already block because like by default, Whisper has a pretty poor API in terms of security. So it's like if we just allow you all the Whisper API, you will be also able to like get the private keys and things like this, or replace them. Yeah, things like that. So we already limit them, so we can allow this while the app is running. But essentially, it's JavaScript is being executed in the browser. But the problem is that won't help you when you need to do anything asynchronously when the app is not open. So we were discussing things like, for instance, you get a notification about, I don't know, you won the bet or something like this, and you need to send this notification. And for that, it's pretty useless to just allow it in Status browser. For that, we thought about different things, and I even had a hacked version of Whisper, like Status Whisper, that allows you to, I guess me and Andrei, we were working on this, that allows you to, in JavaScript, to essentially make a Whisper envelope and then use some HTTP API to just, or RPC API to just send it. But then the problem is where to host it. And I know that there was a huge pushback against hosting our own server with that because of the decentralization reasons. So that's the biggest issue right now. So what will be this place where you go and call this RPC API when there is no Status client active at some point? So yeah, that's the biggest question. That's where we stopped. Otherwise, it's a technically solvable issue.
So just having it the first case supported, that will already be a huge help.
So just inside the browser, right?
Or... Yeah, that would already be a big help for.
Then just ping me on Status. I will add it to our backlog, and we'll try to just make an update to Status Go, and it will just allow this namespace. It's pretty trivial.
So just a question, the namespace needs to be locked, because if you allow anything at Whisper, basically you could also make transactions or anything using that. Right?
Essentially, you can pretend to be someone else, or you can replace the keys and things like this. So all this API, Whisper doesn't split for some reason, like management APIs versus like normal user APIs. So if you allow all Whisper APIs, you will have also all admin APIs that you don't want. So what we did a whitelist of methods that we can allow. Right now we just block everything Whisper, but we can, like, for instance, allow like post, I guess, is the method that you want. That's probably the only one that you want if you want to send stuff, and also creating filters and reading from filters, which, well, it's also a question. Do you need to be allowed to read from Whisper? Because otherwise you will theoretically be able to read all the messages from all the chats.
Is it possible to blacklist the Whisper public key that's the user is logged in as?
So what we do is we prefer, it's also possible. Like, I mean, we can do whatever we want. We intercept all the calls and we can inspect them at runtime. So right now it's just what we implemented is just we whitelisted like post method or something like that. But then we blacklisted it as well, just in case.
We would need the public key for identity purposes.
But you need a separate, or do you need the same public key as a user? Because if you just use post, it will use like keys as a user. Oh, this is private keys I'm talking about. The public keys, you probably can use whatever you want.
Yes, sorry, I meant the private keys from the Whisper keychain.
Yeah. So maybe, I don't know, it's worth also maybe setting up the meeting with Corey about how should we treat those. Maybe we should just generate a second key pair for like DApps separately, so you can figure out if it's a person sent this message or it's a DApp on behalf of this person. So it might.
I think DApps can generate their own identities, though, right? Within and inject it into the Whisper keychain from the API, unless that's changed. So the only thing that really be needed. So I mean, I think that would be fine as long as we can expose the currently logged in user public key to DApps, which doesn't have to be through Whisper.
Yeah, I guess this isn't it possible already just to get a public key from the current account, but just as accounts or something like this. It's not a Whisper API.
That'd be the address. I'm not sure. It'd be the public key.
I'd like to be real sure on what we're exposing to people, like whether or not we're informing the user that that's happening. At least I want to know what we're exposing to people, and then whether or not we're informing the user that it's being exposed.
Yeah, that's what I would like to do. It's like use case by use case. Maybe we can just make a diagram for each use case, how we think, and then you can review it. It's shared.
I think is there also the question of would we confirm with the user each post, or just let that happen? And I kind of see that at minimum the user would have to confirm they want to give Whisper access to the DApp.
I see that too.
Yeah, but then the question is that if the DApp does a post or something, do we want a confirmation for that? Or I'm not sure it would be very helpful, but though, because of depending on the payload.
I don't think it is. I think if we kind of bundle this in the same dialogue that allows you to access Web3 in the first place, the major concern that I have, it's not the only one, the major concern I have is having the private key of the logged in user in the Whisper keychain that is accessible by a DApp. If we can mitigate that, then I think then it's basically down to a responsible disclosure of a public key to the DApp itself.
Right. Yeah, I think a possible solution for that would be the DApp, the user would in his status DApp he authorizes a public private key generated by the DApp itself as a representative, so to speak. And then it gets sent client side, kind of like a send raw transaction in Web3. But the thing is that Whisper does not support this API. As far as I know, it's kind of all like server side, so to speak.
That's what we hacked with Andrei. Actually, we accept. I think it was a raw post or post raw. I don't remember this kind of API when you can encrypt everything in JavaScript, let's say, and then just post raw data, and it will be just transmitted into a Whisper network.
Yeah. That design makes much more sense. So I was actually quite surprised Whisper was designed this way.
Well, that's why there is no Whisper on Infura.
Yes,
that's the
exactly.
exact reason.
Yes, that's exactly why. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that we could even, well, it depends where things go really, but I think that should even be proposed as a standard or extension of Whisper.
We did talk to the Whisper guys, but I don't think it went anywhere, frankly.
Okay.
But maybe we should just go another round of this.
Yeah, I mean, we could propose it as an EIP, but I wouldn't put too much love into it. My understanding is that it's better that we just focus on our own protocol efforts moving forward.
Agree.
Yeah. So maybe we should just have a separate discussion about what exactly to do and who will do what in which time frame. So just specifically for that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Just a final question. If we do then re-enable the Whisper object, how long do you think that could take, including the release itself?
Well, it depends on how do we want to exactly enable it. So that's the point, because just enabling the post message or post draw, even if it's tested, it's just a question of including the release. It probably take a week, but not more. But if we're talking about also having this API or having some UI that shows that okay, the app wants to use Whisper, does it allow? And so it takes obviously a bit more time than.
It would be pretty ideal if we could maintain a separate branch that had this trivial version enabled, so it doesn't block the telenetwork guys. But we won't merge that into develop anytime soon.
That's actually a good idea, I think. Yes. So the simplest post that will actually use the private key of a user, and if it's a separate branch that's just for testing, it shouldn't be a concern so far. Then that can be done in a day or maybe two. Then post draw might take a few days more, because I kept this code in a separate branch. It might be already outdated after all the Geth updates. Because it's a patch to Whisper, obviously, right?
That sounds like a good path forward.
Just something. Yeah.
I think that this concern about using Whisper is actually something in the concern of using the identity of the user, because exactly, of course, there is these other problems about the too permissive API of Whisper that should be solved, but I think the main concern should be the use of identity and what the apps can do automatically or by request, for example, as someone mentioned it.
Yes, so that's why it's critical not to allow the DApp to have access to the private key in the Whisper keychain.
Yeah, but that won't be allowed. The whole method that gets private keys totally blacklisted. So no matter what you expose, it will be blocked on the integration level. So this one won't be exclusive, even if we expose SSH namespace.
Yeah, but what I mean is, for example, if you open the app, you don't want that the app automatically send messages in your name, for example, for your friends, because if they have that, they not only can read the message, but also automatically fake as you, for example.
Yeah, that's true. That's why, in the beta version, when we should release it only probably when it generates a separate pair of keys. So we know that it's a DApp on behalf of this user, but not this user itself. So it should be different, right? That's actually the biggest concern. Yes.
So just another quick question regarding what we're just talking about. The send raw transaction, so to speak, with just forwarding the Whisper package. You're talking about RPC server and all that, but can't we just do the Whisper object that we inject into the DApp? Can't we put an API that all it does is just forward the package?
Yeah, I guess the latest idea was like this. So you just you generate the whole envelope yourself, and the API is just sends envelope, so it's already encrypted with whatever you want and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's what we wanted to essentially. So we worked on to enable bots on Whisper, but it didn't go very far. So.
Yeah, we actually have all of that in GS already with Murmur. and then it's just a matter of the transport protocol. So
yeah. So we need some entrance, right, into Whisper network. And
and this way, that injected object would just have that entry, and Murmur could just connect to that. And this actually for the teller would be great, because then we would have we could, if the browser supports Whisper, then we could use that, and if not, then we can use libTTP and that kind of stuff. So we can talk outside the call about how that API could look like.
Yeah. I'll try to find out where's my proof of concept was.
Awesome.
One thing to keep in mind is that if you allow too free an access to these APIs so that dApps can basically publish anything they want without any kind of structure, we'll also be closing the sane upgrade paths for the future.
The closing the what, sorry?
Sane upgrade paths for the future. So basically, if you allow everything, apps will use everything, and we will never ever be able to retract that access. So sometimes it's good to release a feature with a little bit of structure in the beginning, because it's always easier to give more flexibility than to take flexibility away.
Yeah, you mean like what happened with the access of accounts, that, for example, now we have this private mode. Some apps work with the private mode, others not. So I think it's a very interesting point to have this well thought before releasing any API.
Yeah, it's that, and also like maybe some sort of framing of the message so that we can change our protocol freely, and so thinking a little bit about exactly what kind of functionality you offer to dApps so that we can also remain flexible for the future.
I think that depends at what level we're talking about the protocol, because in my opinion, Whisper should just be the transport and nothing else. So or any protocol we do should be within a Whisper message, basically, pack, and so it shouldn't affect. It shouldn't really matter if the dApp is using that communication part. It shouldn't affect us and how we do our protocol.
Well, I'll give you an example. One thing is that we're not really happy with mail servers, for example. So if we expose mail servers and dApps start using them, we'll have to keep supporting mail servers forever. Right. Whereas in the protocol working group, there are some thoughts about offering synchronization, basically, or replication as a feature, which would probably not be based on mail servers. So if we want to expose some kind of message streaming or whatever you want to call it, reliable messaging as a feature, you sort of bake yourself a little bit into a corner if you offer mail server support and then remove it and try to introduce this other form.
I think the issue with mail servers is that, so I don't mean to derail the discussion. I think the issue with mail servers is that they are basically, they look like they're extending the protocol, at least for our RPC call. And while in practice, I think it should be just something that is just basically like a channel, and someone requests within a channel to get the messages. And then the mail server is just like another application that is listening to that channel and responds to it. And that way you don't have that sort of coupling that exists now. And so if someone wants to implement like a sidechain or stuff like that was proposed as possible solutions for a mail server, then they just listen to that channel and they implement whatever solution, and that's it. It works. But if it's something that's done on a protocol level or RPC level, then everyone who wants to implement a Whisper client compatible with Status has to implement those same calls, same extension, and then becomes really, really coupled. And then it brings all these issues that you're saying that dApps rely on something, and because they are done in a certain way, we basically have to support them forever.
I mean, the Whisper, the SSH object that we're exposing here is already defined by Web3.js and basically Ethereum Foundation, right? So even though they were exposing it, like it's already borked. And I don't think that the amount of dApps that even work at the moment or even exist, and the ones that even use Whisper are fewer still. So I think practically speaking, well, at least I would hope that we could take all of these things into consideration when we're working on our own version of our own protocol. And we may keep this, but I mean, most likely we'll drop support for it in the future anyway. So as long as that messaging is clear.
So this is all about managing expectations, yeah. And also not painting ourselves into an uncomfortable corner.
Shall we move on to 2?
Yeah, let's move on.
Regarding mail servers, I think that what should happen is that our implementation of mail servers should become something called mail nodes. And
let's make sure the conversation is focused on sort of, so this was about Whisper, but we have quite a few other things to go through. So let's move on to reproducible builds and sort of the quick overview and what's been going on. Pedro?
Yep. So I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page. So just to start, I'll give an overview of the problem for those who haven't been participating in discussions in this space. So our goal is to be able to build old commits and be sure that they produce the same binaries. Right now, our repos are not set up for that. They sometimes reference external tools, which can be replaced by third parties at any time. We have no control over that. Or the same situation for branches in external repos that we reference. Sometimes we fork repos, but we still reference like the master branch. And it's very easy for some other status contributor to just do a commit on that master branch, and that means that we'll never be able to rebuild, to just check out an old commit and be able to build the same thing. So what I've been doing to mitigate this is, for instance, self-hosting the external tools which don't have reliable versioning, and replacing the node references that target a branch or a specific commit with release tags whenever possible. So in order of preference, we would like to use as much as possible release tags, and if not possible, then a commit SHA, even though the commit SHA has the problem that if someone rebases a branch and force pushes it, then that will be broken and we won't be able to build it again. So as much as possible, we want to rely on release tags. Of course, last week I did this, but in order to make sure that in the future we don't continue to run into these issues, I've built a bot to monitor our repos. So whenever you do a pull request that touches on package.json or go package.toml for Go repositories, it will check what kind of reference you're doing, and if it notices that you're relying on a branch, then it will prevent you from merging that pull request and suggest changes. The thing is, there are a ton of repos that we rely on right now, and it's not easy to go through all of those and make sure that we are in a good shape. So I would like to ask everyone if you've forked repos and you like added a reference to status react or something, if you could go make sure if those repos are in a good shape and not relying on the master branch or some other branch, just create a release tag on the repo and update status react or whatever other repo. Yeah, just making sure that it's not just a small corner of status that is aware of this. We need to all be working towards this and being on the same page. I don't know if you have any questions.
Can you be a little more explicit on what everyone can do to help this?
Ideally, the bot will already catch these situations, but we can also be proactive. And like if there's a repo that will never be touched, then the bot will not say anything. So ideally, we would go to repos that we forked and create a release if there isn't one already. Create a release for the specific commit that we want to use, and update that in status react. You know, sometimes we have 2 or 3 levels down. So yeah. It's something that everyone needs to be aware as they add dependencies to our repos, that we might want to build them in the future, not just the current head of the repository, but some other, like we might need to build a patch to an old release. And we want to ensure that we're building the same thing and not with some uncontrolled dependencies. So just be critical of dependencies that you see and ask yourself, can this be built in the same way in the future if a repo moves and has some new additions to this branch? Will I be able to build it again exactly the same way? That's the good reflex to have, I think.
Yeah, I think that most things can be written by themselves, but I think that some simple things that are just like for convenient, that if you take like 100 lines to write it, that of course should not be a dependency. But if something very large that, and also it's something about the trust about that. If we don't trust the dependency, we can audit that specific version and get that commit hash of that dependency and lock there. So there is this 2 cases that I see.
All right.
Yep, I think that there's no further questions, and I think that's it.
Cool, awesome. And then there's been a bit of discussion on sort of fee structures for S&T utility. There's a discuss thread, and I don't know, Rachel, do you want to give a brief overview?
Sure, I'll give a synopsis. So this is coming up in context of sticker market sales because we're doing work to finalize the sticker market registry contract right now. And specifically, whether we should take a percentage of each sale to either fund our project directly or to burn, perhaps. I guess the heart of the matter is really about how our project sustains itself financially in the long run. And the predominant hypothesis seems to be that token velocity and value combined with having good open source contributions should eliminate the need for us to ever be charging rent for features, but that it might be worth burning a percentage of each sale of stickers in the meantime to have a deflationary effect. So I'm not sure if we actually want to get into the debate about fee structures overall and financial sustainability of the project, or if we should just stick to the focus of the sticker market registry contract and regarding the fees for that right now. What decision do we take for the contract, and how do we future-proof it for any like potentially desired changes in the future?
I think that if we have something like sticker market and the curation market, then having this curation over the sticker packs, we might have a kind of optional fee, and maybe when you can, the owner of that sticker pack can specify how much a fee goes to the curation market automatically based on the user buys. So it goes slowly rising organically as users buy it. And of course, if the sticker market artists want to promote their own sticker pack, they could just deposit in the curation market.
I think that there was also a similar suggestion made that artists, when they submit their packs to the registry, they could also optionally donate some percentage of sales to Status.
From an implementation standpoint, I mean, going back to the sort of registry discussion, from an implementation standpoint, a lot of these look very similar. Basically, it's a certain number and sending it to a certain address. If we're choosing to burn, then it's just 0x0. Otherwise, the address would be like the curation market or whatever. So we can definitely defer this decision making while not impeding implementation so much. If we just implement these calls.
Yep, I think that makes sense. Ricardo, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we can go with free fee, or maybe we can settle optional in the smart contract. So if we see any problems, we can raise it and start with 0. But the question about having the fee is also about the appeal to the artists, because then if you have no fee, you have a strong appeal for artists joining this system. For example, if the competitors, they get a lot of haircut from the artists.
Yeah, and I mean, in competitors, I guess in like Web 2 versions of sticker markets, there's much higher fees taken out of every sale. And it's much harder to get stickers included in the market. It's very hard to even do that in the first place. So it's a huge advantage of our marketplace that creators will be able to do so permissionlessly. But I think when it comes to economic incentives for the artists, they have to have an active user base and a product that is accessible to many people in order for them to see sales as well. So there's multiple factors there. Also,
the problem of introducing a fee that is with no reason is exactly moral, because it might not be so you are creating a concentration of power maybe there, and might be unfair. Having optional donation fee, I think there is no problem, but having it forced, I don't agree with it. But we can.
Which is why
Sorry?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's definitely a moral question, and that's why I agree. If we're going to have such a thing, then it should benefit everyone who's participating in the network.
Yeah, and the reason that the ways we can have fees for going to the development is exactly by the idea of slashing maybe bad things on it and having some sort of curation over it. So I think we can go sticker markets without these fees. Maybe we introduce some fee to the first sticker pack that our artists need to create. They need to commit something, but I also don't think it's good. But might be interesting because of maybe spam. Maybe there is too much junk going inside of the market, and then we need to some way to filter it. So, but then this fee it doesn't go to the status. It just gets locked there to just like the usernames, and see how we can maybe curate this in the curation market, and maybe see if we can have some sort of trust on the output of Croatian market to actually slash someone deposits. I think the current way that we have in the current Croatian market is more like just ranking, so it doesn't have any consequences. Besides there is some loss of deposits in case of internal slashing, but I mean, yeah. Also, we can then just use the Croatian market as this is stated and have like a minimal reputations to show. So to have this filtering. So yeah, that's what I think about the whole idea of fees, because that's the only reason we can charge a fee morally is to filter. Otherwise, we don't have any reason to charge that fee.
From an implementation point of view, if we sort of, are there any blockers in terms of if we defer things and just say, well, it's going to some address and we let things, like, is there something that's blocked in terms of when this decision has to be made?
Yeah, I mean, this is like impeding the contract from being completed. So yeah, it's important that we decide on it this week, ideally.
But it can't. Okay.
But we could also, I mean, like
you can just defer it to a different contract, right, and then leave that underspecified for now. No.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Is there a problem with that?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Any objections to that approach?
So it would be an optional fee in the smart contract, or two versions of the smart contracts, one with the fee and other without the fee.
Optional, I imagine, and set at 0 to start with.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, we will focus in going to that direction then in this sticker market contract. Maybe we will have some other calls just regarding this sticker market, where we might detail how the user experience over this would be, these optional things, and how that we can, because that should be not just for the MVP, but for the whole idea of the final roadmap of sticker market. So it's to take consideration. We didn't have this decision, and I think that mostly everyone is agree with this idea.
Yep, right. Let's defer that to another call.
Cool. All right. So moving on, ULC just got merged upstream in Go Ethereum after 8 months. So that's awesome. So I guess, what does this mean for status, and can we integrate it sometime soon? I guess, Igor, you have the context from sort of the less integration effort and so on. What's your take?
Well, there is even a PR that integrates ULC, but as a separate patch and enables it. But the problem with ULC is the same as the problem is with less. It needs servers somewhere. And with all these Constantinople things, there are no reliable servers, even on the mainnet, nor on Ropsten, nor on Rindby right now, because as I understand, last time it was tested on Rindby. So, well, we need to wait until Constantinople is finally resolved. That's the big blocker. And it was since I started integrating this when it was just a patch to Geth, because we started doing something and then like half of the nodes were like non-Constantinople, half were Constantinople, and things like this. And also, ULC is not a magic thing, so it requires that you trust some nodes, and that means that you kind of need some place, and it's not solved. It's just like this. This PR is essentially a technical implementation of what if you know who you can trust, then you can like do this quick sync solutions and things like this. But the question is, how would you know whom you can trust? And that's a big question to use.
It's still a step up, though, from only offering Infura.
Sure. But that means that we also will need to host these trusted servers ourselves and protect them and do everything.
On that note, Andrei Petrov, who's working on VipNode, he also reached out and is looking into integrating ULC support for VIP nodes. So that would be at least one source for these types of nodes. It's definitely not as a general solution, but it's a potential start maybe.
Yeah, but the problem is that you can't validate anything. What differs between LAS and ULC that ULC doesn't validate blocks properly. It's sort of defers this thing to some other nodes that it's quote unquote trust. So where will you get these trusted nodes from? Like sources of just blocks, it's you can find them. But which ones you can trust or which ones you can't, that's the big question.
So that might be something that we could make like an appeal to someone that is giving bad information about a block, and to participate on that, you need to have some deposit, and then you can earn by giving this ULC responses to the other nodes. So if someone misbehaves, they would go to some kind of court system that maybe could be automated, because we probably can prove the nodes can do that automatically. They don't need a human intervention. It's not like something like in the Teller network that you need human verification of if that is an honest claim or not. In this case, all the nodes can just verify from their blockchain if that current state was valid when it has once answered.
Yeah, but that makes it like a big project, right? So it's like a somebody want.
We can start like by being that one entity that does the verification, and then decentralize that as a second step. And of course, that's as step 0, we would be everything, like just maybe the Infura that lists the trusted nodes, and then you can register there, and then be slash it like by status if you misbehave.
Yeah, but I'm sure, but it's just the full blown like project in terms of what I see. Otherwise, or like, so we either just do everything centralized, and then we just provide the second centralized solution, like as opposed to Infura, which is ULC and our own trusted servers. And sure, the blocks will be generated by some or sent by someone else, but all the validation will happen on our nodes. Or we just make the whole project with like a smart contract and this slashing and whatever that else is there, because there are multiple ways how can we try doing this, but well.
Yeah, and we can do like a state channel of signatures to do these micro payments between the nodes. So the nodes, when they request, they need to provide the signatures, which then would allow status to move these tokens from their balances to the but of course, after many requests, not like every request.
Yeah, but my point was just that it's like not a week worth of work. It's just much more than that.
So first of all, there's a proposal on Discuss about this specific thing, how to incentivize things. So if you want to take a look at that. But above all, I would say that it's a big mistake to run any ULC servers as status. We could offer this as like if a user already has a trusted server through VipNode or their own, then having access to ULC is fantastic. But us running trusted servers are a big deal.
Agree.
So yeah, that's why it's not prioritized so far.
I'd say it's a big no-no.
A better way to maybe go about that is to have like for maybe you think ULC might be allowing someone to run some type of node at their house and then their ULC version like, attaching to it. But us running, like I agree with us running something trusted is not the right way to go forward.
But why is it better than somebody runs the node and connects with the HTTP or JSON RPC API? How is that any better than that? So we allow right now, if you create a custom network, you can still show your custom RPC URL, and it will work. I mean, it's a different technology. You get the same kind of thing. Is it any better than that then?
I would say the current standard point is about the same.
Yeah, it's the same, but it's a stepping stone to something else. But running our own servers is worse. It's like a step backwards instead of a neutral step.
Yeah, that I agree, and that's why both LESS and ULC are not that high on the roadmap right now, because it's either a huge project on how to do the whole like crypto economy balance that everyone can run nodes and they somehow communicate and validate each other, or it's not.
Yeah,
it's maybe even worse than Infura.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both the workload and the secondary step. If there's the ability to expose, at least the ability to run ULC, even if you're bringing your own node, that would be a great step in the right direction.
Oh yeah, that is possible to implement relatively in the short term. I don't know. Again, the PR was merged, and I don't know how well tested was it. So we still need to, because we had problems with LAS, and ULC probably has the same issues with like chain being too far away from from what it actually is, and doesn't really handle when the chain forks and then remerges. It didn't handle this like well, neither in LAS nor in ULC, because it's essentially the same thing in most of the cases. So yeah, we can try to enable that and see, at least as a test mode. Again, we have LAS as a test mode. We can just provide ULC as a test mode when we upgrade status go next time.
That would be amazing. And let's just not worry about any further than that for now.
Sure.
I think that's some of the ULC improvements. They also can be used for the mail servers improvements. So, like to getting rid of the mail servers, because it seems to solve the same problem, but instead of solving for this story of messages network. So it's kind of similar problem in my point of view.
I don't know. I don't see how, but because essentially what LAS is like normal Ethereum client, but with like smaller receipt sizes that you download, and like smaller. You don't download all the data; you download just selected data, but you still verify it and yada yada yada. And ULC is the same as LESS, like literally the same code, but it's just that verification of blocks code. Instead of you doing this locally, you like call some RPC method or something to some other node that returns you the hash or something like this. I don't remember the exact details, but it's essentially it's the same blockchain code. That's a few more things are disabled there, or delegated to other nodes. So it's not like some thing on top of like blockchain. It's just
Yeah, I agree that there is this difference between that in Ethereum you have this linked information because of the blockchain, while in Status you don't have that. We actually need to solve that problem in like having a proof of stake or something like that for sending the messages that we didn't solve it, and so every message is valid, while in Ethereum not.
Just on the topic of like what the difference is between this and having your own sort of remote node or whatever. I mean, if you're running everything yourself and it's just one-to-one, then there's no difference. But this also opens up, because if you have ULC, you can have multiple nodes, right? And you can trust, so you can have semi-trusted setup. So maybe you have multiple friends, and let's say you have sort of less service in DApp node or whatever. You connect to multiple, and you don't need to trust anyone, but it's still. It's if you sort of check that 3 out of 5 return the same hash, then you're still better off. So that type of reasoning you can't, and maybe there's also other types of reasoning you can do, but you can't do that with if you just have someone else's remote servers. So it's slightly more sophisticated as well. which I think is a difference.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh, cool. Anything else? We'll say, okay, all right. Arbitration. So there's a bunch of teams who have been looking into sort of thinking about arbitration mechanisms, and sort of this seems like a common need, and just trying to figure out what this looks like and who will implement it and so on. I guess Hester, you had some points you wanted to discuss more in detail.
Yes. Hold on. I'm trying to find my list of questions.
Sure.
Basically, it's not. It's not to go. The intention would not be to go too much in depth. It's more to make a kind of inventory of who is concerned about arbitration, as in like what swarm would need some form of arbitration. It kind of came up in both Teller Network, Sticker Market, dApp Store. So it seems to be a relevant topic, and I'd like to understand for whom it is most relevant, where everybody is. So I was hoping to do like a sort of around the room to the swarm leads to understand, has arbitration come up? Are you already working on it? Do you see any likely forms of implementation?
I think that the most solid implementation of arbitration that I've seen is Kleros.io from Consensus. And it seems, I'm not sure if it's running, but I've seen the presentations on like I think in YouTube there is 2 presentations about them, and it's very like it seems like a good solution, and they provide examples of user experience, but it's mostly like people trust random other people to deal with their problems, and like the majority will select the most obvious answer that is the truth, and that is kind of how Kleros found out how to make it. And it seems like it's something like this what we want, but in the swarms that I see that requires is, like you said, Teller Network for example, the disputing of claims. And also might be relevant to Sticker Market about, for example, a copyright claim, something like that. If we want to implement that stuff, because copyright is not really nice, but maybe we want to have it, just because, like, to prevent not exactly copyright, but removing duplicates and only inside of our own registry and just letting the first there. It's not like a copyright that you are suing someone, but it feels like that. And maybe the curation market could be a way to get over arbitration in the Sticker Market's case, but not in the Teller Network. And also curation market it kind of solves a different problem. That is, as I said earlier, is the ranking. It makes like a ranking of the bests. And arbitration is like a decision of who is right and who is wrong. So that's basically how I see this whole topic.
So you're saying Teller Network would mostly be to, like, in case of disputes around claims, and Sticker Market would be around copyright issues.
Copyright was an example, but we can have other things like for example, obscene emojis. We don't want that, like maybe, or maybe we have a rating claim over it, and then if someone registers an obscene, like sexual sticker in a +18 claim, then it could be the arbitration could kill it. So of course, this is a much more advanced. In the roadmap of Sticker Market, the MVP would not include that, but at the end of the final product, we certainly would have that kind of stuff. Like, for example, in the MVP, we have categories. and the controller would be able to remove or change the category of the registered sticker pack to be sold. And so this could be done by maybe this arbitration in systems.
So that's Teller Network and Sticker Market. Do you see, or maybe does anyone else see relevance of arbitration anywhere else?
So in the case of Sticker Market, so as Ricardo said, we are considering using Curation Market. So I'm curious to hear if you think that there is some kind of limitation of using Curation Market specifically for our Sticker Market.
Yes, it actually depends on how the Curation Market would end looking like. But in the general sense, there is this limitation because you cannot take an action to change something in the Curation Market. You can only curate. Maybe you can curate a sticker market over a topic, for example. But then it kind of gets like inconsistent, not consistent with the data set of the sticker market itself that says that it has only one category. So the things should make sense in this case. So maybe the Curation Market would be used for sticker market, but in a sense of the ranking of better stickers, and while the arbitration would be used to actually remove a sticker pack from the existence of the apps. And so yeah, that I think is the difference.
Okay.
And for the closest solution that we have, like the MVPs that requires this type of solution, we are using a controller that would be a multi-sig wallet, and later we can decide on how the arbitration would look like. In the case of Claros, the arbitration it actually looks like a governance, and it's basically that, if you see the smart contracts. So that's a kind of a solution. Maybe we just go to work into the DAO and set the DAO to do the arbitration.
It sounds like at least also given the time that for Teller Network, you're mostly looking into arbitration now. So it would make sense if it comes up in other projects to check in with Teller Network to see what the status is there and if something has been developed at that point in time.
So I'm not sure if this strictly sort of counts as arbitration, but I mean, there's likely going to be both in sort of ULC kind of setups, which are not a priority right now, but network incentivization, there might be sort of slashing schemes where you put up some stake and then if certain conditions are met, you slash that stake. I don't know if you want to, but that's a kind of dispute resolution in a sense. I'm not sure if you want to have it under the same umbrella, but it might come up there. It's slightly different though in its mechanics, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's similar. I also want to add there another thing that is regarding that we should start implementing these kind of report features while we don't have it, like sending, like if we at least send an email, but I think we can like send a message inside of status using Murmur, I think soon, and maybe to someone that is taking care of this, because even if we don't have the perfect solution, we need to have that kind of solution to, because we need to kind of have this expectation of what we need to solve. And of course, we will include that report feature. It will go to the wall of shame, but it's better this way than don't having it at all. So it at least it go, if it doesn't work as perfectly, it at least show us that we need to fix this.
Would it make sense to, similar to what was proposed for fee structure and so on, to creates like an interface for this, and then you can imagine that whatever sort of contract deals with this, it's kind of generic, and then the specific mechanism that's used can be, maybe it depends on the use case, so maybe it depends on research we do and so on. Would such an abstraction make sense and sort of be useful to various products?
Yes, I think we could have a swarm for like opening arbitration cases that several, like maybe we could implement that even for profiles that are, I don't know, it depends on the future of how messaging will be, but for now we only send that message to someone or to some channel, like can be a public channel that receive all the reports. So when you click reports in a sticker pack, it will go to a public channel that is reports and says, this is sticker pack, I reported it. And then someone will be looking at it, and maybe we can take some action if that's relevant.
So we can definitely, I think there's an interesting parallel to legal systems here, because you can look at it as kind of like a common law based system where you say, well, all we know is there's going to be conflicts and they might involve these agents, but it's specifically how the decision is made is kind of depends on, right? So if you defer to like some abstract interface, and then you can sort of build up this, like depending on what type of, like maybe you start off with the most common offenders, or whether that's like stickers and copyright claims or something else, and then you can sort of, but you start by underspecifying it. And just say there's going to be something like this, but it's sort of not clear exactly what the mechanisms are, and then you can evolve from there, maybe. Yeah.
I think that the problem that we want to solve is, like, if someone like you starts using sticker market and start including a lot of junk or in there, or maybe, as I said, sexual things, and that maybe it's pleasant to the people to go to the sticker market then, because there is a lot of this junk there showing their screens. It's the best interest of the status network to get rid of that things. And we will have this, but in a centralized way, in a multi-sig. And what I'm proposing is exactly to have a open channel communication in the UI to send that messages to these public channels. And then, of course, as you said, it's not very well specified how it will be, but it's something in that some starts that we can then progress in. And I think that at the later on end would be something like just like Claros, or that, but it's optimized for the SNT holders.
And any other thoughts on arbitration? Maybe also from people who haven't spoken. All right, cool. Let's move on. So regarding sort of license for a code and moving into DAO and how the relationship looks between the code and the GmbH. I guess, Jared, do you want to?
Yeah. So basically, depending on the regulatory climates, the jurisdictions we distribute binaries in, and the distribution channels that policies that we have to adhere to, it seems that the GmbH may be forced to create binaries that are in conflict with the vision of what the community is about. And in this case, it makes a lot of sense for us to move a lot of our code base into the public domain, which is actually a lot more complicated than it sounds. It's very difficult to waive your copyright. However, if we relicense under CC0, it basically waives everything in the public domain. However, it degrades into a very liberal license in the event that the law does not allow you to put code into the public domain. So in this case, that would allow the community to take the source code and create a new source of truth, in which the GmbH would probably maintain a fork of and contribute to. So that requires the participation of every contributor who's contributed to the code base. Basically, I want to see if there's any objections to that. You can mull it over, but then we have to go rounding up people and getting them to sign some basic paperwork, allowing us to do that. So, just
what does this mean for people who have left the project?
That means we need to contact them and get their permission. It also, and the same thing with contributors who've never actually joined the project. They're just not called any contributor at all, basically.
Does it have like an impact on dependencies too?
Not really, because basically we're licensed under MPL, MIT, and Apache. I think that's the predominant ones. They're all copyleft in some form, and CC0 is compatible with all of that. And anyway, the public domain is more so.
Is there any statute that's like a time frame in which we have to go back? Is it everyone who's ever contributed to status, or is there like if someone hasn't contributed in a certain amount of time, they don't have to be?
Everyone owns copyright over their own contributions. So if we're not using that code anymore, then that wouldn't be relevant, but we would have to remove that from our history. I think it's better just to reach out to everybody we can.
I was under the impression that on our contracts we already gave up the rights to our work, but maybe I'm wrong.
Actually, I haven't looked up on that. I did ask for Sonia's advice last week, but I haven't really heard much from her.
Yeah, but if someone doesn't join and sign a contract, then they're not a part of that set. I mean, it might be easier for anyone who's ever worked for us, but any outside contributors would have to be looked up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, I guess it might lead to revisit of all the dependencies if their licenses are compatible with what's.
I don't think that's really an issue. I mean, if we're using the dependencies and they're not an issue with GPL or MPL, then they're not going to be. It's not going to be an issue with public domain, because those dependencies still retain their own licenses, right? It's only our code base that we're waiving the copyright to.
In terms of practically moving forward with this, like what help would you like to see from other people? And is there some sort of minimal core that, in terms of this is the most important that we would, for example, maybe Status Quo and Status React, or like how do you look at that practically, sort of?
Yeah, so basically, Bob Summerwheels actually put up like steps for when they did the relicensing of CPP Ethereum, but essentially it's make everybody aware of this, then gather everybody's contact details and emails, then email them with the situation and the paperwork, and get as many signatures back as you can.
I guess practically speaking, we might have some issues with certain maybe bounties and so on, and in that case, we would have to look at what they contributed and then, I don't know, see if we can replace it, or if not, then I don't know. Because I remember previous open source projects has been especially for like designs and so on, it was sort of involved in a game, and there was map textures and so on, and there was a conflict with one of the designers, and he left, and that led to all of the sort of map textures having to be redone. I don't know. It's yeah. I mean, one way.
I mean, we
this
have
is
to
also
cross that
where
bridge.
yeah. This is also where maybe sort of decoupling the protocol from implementation would also be useful, because that way, if there are issues with specific implementation, then that would be less severe as well. So on that note, it would be useful to make sure that also when we do all these specifications and so on, that the Swarm templates are already sort of CC0, but I don't know if there are other types of specification documents where this would be applicable as well.
Yeah, I mean, if we're seeing further into the future, like there's a very real possibility that the reference implementation will be a new code base anyway. So it's not the end of the world if we can't do it with this one, but it's definitely worth trying.
All right. Any other thoughts on licenses? Cool. All right. And I guess we're skipping the Swarm updates. I don't think we'll have time for that. And we also have the town halls, but we sort of recently started blocking PRs. We had some issues with PRs being merged that broke develop, and we are trying to block them with automated tests and so on. And there's been some efforts in that area recently. I guess, I don't know, Pedro, do you want to give a brief overview of the state of things there and maybe things people want to be aware of?
Yeah. So the issue that we had is that there was a period of time during the pipeline of a pull request where we weren't checking if automated tests had been run. And what I fixed last week was to ensure that a PR already starts failing. You know, when you create a PR, it's in a failed state because there's no automated tests running, and that fixes the majority of the issues. The thing we don't have running yet is actually blocking the PR from being merged, even through a script. And to do that, we would have to change some other things in the way the repo is set up. I tried to do this with Jakub last week, but we had some issues. So we quickly saw that it wasn't an easy solution, and that we would need to investigate further in another repo so that we wouldn't step on other people's shoes while they're trying to do their work and merge PRs. So ideally, we would create like a replica of Status React with all the automations and do the tests there. And once we are sure of that everything is working, then we can deploy that on Status React. But right now, at least we get a visual indication that the PR is not in a good state, which is already a very good start.
Yeah, I actually have some addition to that. That's this issues that when develop got broken, there weren't like any malicious case or like for purpose breaking something. It was mostly because the visual indication on the PR was that everything is okay and just tests didn't run yet. So this thing with like actually blocking the script from running is, to my, I don't know, what I think is much less of an importance, because if a person like just sees that, okay, the PR checks aren't green yet, then it's not safe to merge. Then it's...
Yeah, if we see that in the future we still hit situations where we didn't want to merge and it was done, then we can look further into actually enforcing this. But I think for now we're in a good situation already.
And I guess, sorry, good.
Okay, go on.
No, just on the note of like, it's great to have these tools that are sort of helping us make sure that we sort of stick to protocols and so on. But it's important also to remember that it's kind of a cultural shift as well. A lot of people working on the code base and so on, and that people sort of test their stuff beforehand and on multiple platforms, and just make sure that sort of the PR is in good shape, and try to be more harsh last few months and sort of reverting things, because like breaking develop it's a real hit to productivity, everyone else, because you sort of depend on it working, and it can be very frustrating for people who just want to work on something and then all of a sudden it doesn't build because of something completely unrelated. So please like test your stuff before you push it, and then let's be mindful of other people and their productivity. And if something is breaking, don't be afraid to revert it. And code reviews as well, like just blocking it if it's not good enough. Anything else that someone wants to add on that area?
Yes, I just wanted to add, like to describe the actual workflow, how it works now. Basically, as you said, we are not blocking everything from the beginning, because it can slow us too much, since a lot of pairs need to be merged without any testing, without even automated tests, in case if it's infrastructure or any other pair which is not related to the product. So right now tests are setting pending status only when they start. It means that they start when the pair is into test column. They won't block it or set pending status before pair getting to that column. So, and it's not even like a forced block. You still can use merge stash and merge this pair, but it's like a failed status in the end if any of the tests are is failed, or like passed status, so all statuses will be green when all of them are passed, but we can't block them from the beginning.
Yeah, what I did is add a check at the beginning of the pull request saying the tests, this is failing, the E2E tests are failing because they will only be run when this moves into the to test column. So at least it gives an explanation. It also makes it easier for people who are not familiar with the process. They get an additional explanation of when the actual end-to-end tests will run.
Also, what I can see now, each force push removes statuses from the PR, right? Because it's a new commit. Does it set status back, Pedro?
I don't think so. That would, I could add support for that to listen to force pushes and recreate the status.
Great, thank you.
All right, cool. So I guess we actually managed to go through pretty much everything that was suggested except Swarm updates, which is pretty impressive. I guess quick announcements before we wrap up. So let's start with one. We FOSDEM this week. Nimbus is going to be presenting. Jacek is talking about making an Ethereum client from scratch. It's really exciting. And then we also have the protocol workshop. That's on Thursday and Friday, and we'll try to have like a hangout if you want to join. There will also be notes from that, as well as some kind of talk about what this means for core next week. Igor?
Yep, the second one is that firstly we're going to release one more hotfix, but put that aside. We are planning to wrap up the next public release, 0933. So if you have some PR that absolutely have to be in the next release, please tell me or Anna about this until the end of tomorrow, essentially working day. If not, then we can guarantee that it goes to the release. That's it.
Cool. Anything else?
I'm thinking about how status can self-update. There's a thread in Discuss, open to ideas and thoughts.
Cool. All right.
I have a short mini update. So I'm participating in an effort right now in San Francisco, which is called ETH 1.x. If you're not aware of what that is, it's basically an effort to keep the ETH1 chain alive and maybe even thriving while ETH2 is being developed. So there's a couple of proposals going on here. They're discussing new sync modes because sync is one of the biggest issues that we have and why people are having difficulties running nodes. Other than that, there are chain pruning modes discussed and so on. But the biggest topic is probably the introduction of certain features that will allow a more nuanced accounting of storage. And this more nuanced accounting of storage will be used for basically two things. One is to potentially increase the gas limit in the future so that you can compute more and sort of store while still keeping storage capped about the same way. And depending if it's necessary, also introduce storage rent. So if you're interested in these discussions, there are recordings and there's going to be lots of discussion on this topic in the all core devs calls going forwards, I suspect. So now is a good time to sort of tune in and think about how you feel about these changes and participate in the discussions surrounding them.
I think that's a really important thing to be discussed, and all developers should be aware of that, because it means that using smart contracts becomes more complex, but it becomes actually, it's needed. This I think everyone in the community agrees with that.
Cool. Any other?
Yeah, one thing real quick. We're starting a HackerOne campaign, probably a private campaign that allows us to work out the details of dealing with incident response, dealing with the disclosures, and so on and so forth. We'll start in about a week and a half when we get back I get back from Belgium. So you can expect we're going to try and tune the disclosure rate or valid report rate from HackerOne hackers to about 5 per month. So you can expect 5 bugs from HackerOne per month. The scope that we are starting off with that people will be looked at will be any of our current releases on mobile and desktop, and then whatever infrastructure we have to to serve that to the public. So if there's problems in any of that they can find, when there will be, then you can expect bugs from them that are well formed, because they have like a triage service that validates, reproduces, and manages the quality of reports before sending them to us. So just letting you know to be expecting that in about 2 weeks of time.
All right. Anyone else? Otherwise, Cool. I would like to ask people to rate this call. I know the core team is doing this, so just in terms of how useful it is, just scale from 1 to 10. If you would just write the number in status core devs on status, as well as any thoughts on how these calls could be improved and be more useful. So please just put a number 1 to 10, where 10 is the highest in terms of how useful these calls are for you. That's it for now. See you guys in 2 weeks. Cheers.
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 Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.